Welcome everybody. It's November 7th, 2017, 6:33 p.m. We're here for a regular business meeting of the Laramie City Council. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please rise and join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, can you do roll call, please?
Gabriel.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
McKinney.
Here.
Palikas.
Here.
Shumway.
Here.
Schuster.
Here.
Pierce.
Here.
Somerville.
Here.
That's 8 present and 0 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a presentation from Laramie BikeNet. We have a representative of BikeNet.
We do.
We do.
Dan McCoy.
Welcome, Mr. McCoy.
Mayor, councilors, we're here today. I'd like to recognize Cindy Duan, who is the president of BikeNet. And my name is Dan McCoy. I'm the fundraising chair from Laramie BikeNet. And we're here to present today the city, particularly the Parks and Recreation Department, with a check in the amount of $10,500 in a fundraising campaign that was 2 years in the making to raise funds for a potential future bike park. And this is specifically for the planning aspects of it. I'd like to also recognize Todd Fieser with the Parks and Recreation Department, who's been really instrumental in helping us and also with guiding this process. Right now, as you all probably, many of you probably remember, in 2015, Resolution 87 was passed in support of our fundraising efforts. And we had a pretty lofty goal at that time to raise a substantial amount of money, and we came, I think, pretty darn close to that. And we hope with this funds that we can move forward with the planning aspects of a potential future bike park. The location and details specifically of what might go into that bike park will be left to the community to decide, and we hope to work to help make those informed decisions as well too, or play a role in that. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
So,
well, thank you guys so much.
Any questions from council?
Yeah, questions? Councilor Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe a question for Todd. I was just wondering how this might complement the trail system that's going in east of town at 45th and Crow on the school section. How do you see this complementing the park versus the trail system out there?
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Gabriel, I'll actually let Dan answer that. He's prepared to give you those.
For sure, absolutely. Councilor Gabriel, this at least tentatively what we see, so the schoolyard trail project that BikeNet is also working on collaboratively with the Parks and Recreation Department is a separate area for multi-use trails. It's kind of been, many people kind of see it, it's a BikeNet project, it's bike trails, but it's really actually a multi-use trail system that's going on out there that's also combining and that's also networked into the Jacoby Ridge Trail system. The bike park is really, as it is expressed in a variety of different communities around Wyoming and in the region, bike parks typically have a variety of different types of elements that are included in it that are very inclusive for cycling. So we'll include things such for kids, for new users to cycle, to bikes, and then also for generally more advanced elements as well too for individuals with more advanced skills. Tentatively, one of the locations that BikeNet has expressed interest in specifically is behind the Laramie Rec Center between the high school and the Ice and Event Center. There's a parcel of property that is owned by the city that has a ridge line that would also be really beneficial to putting in elements that would allow for some for jumps or flow type trails. And that also would really tie in well to the other existing recreational infrastructure that the city maintains out there. And also to have other types of park amenities that might be there for people to enjoy it more than just a bike park as well. So, does that?
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Counselor Hanson?
Is one of the purposes of such a bike park to teach kids how to ride a bike? Is that part of it, or is it all of it, or?
Honorable Mayor and Councilor Hanson, it can be that. So there's been a variety of different expressions of that. Some bike parks can actually include paved trails with stop signs and interpretive signage to help teach kids how to, pay attention to cycling rules and also to give them a little bit agility skills and so forth. I think largely what we envision is what is the community needs. So obviously that's going to be best determined through public input sessions, and then also working with a designer, somebody or a firm that has actually done this in a variety of different communities, who can help us determine what our community needs are and express that in that specific park.
I'm asking the question because the police department, of course, does it at the rec center a lot
Yeah.
with stop signs and markings, et cetera. So I was interested. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Schuster?
I don't know if it's for Todd or you. Originally on the property that the city had purchased across the street, I'm gonna say that from Walmart, we had originally planned a bike park there. Is this anything with that, or it was a couple of years ago, I guess maybe this one never made it through on the stages. So it would have been next to, is it called Sherman Hills? It had been right there, we had planned a park right in there too. So maybe that one's went by the wayside and we've picked other properties.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Schuster, I'm actually not aware of the property. If you're thinking of the, where we built the Imperial Heights Park potentially, it had been intended to have some soft surface trail and some pieces like that, but I'm not actually aware in any of the research I've done that there was any property that was picked up. If I can do a little bit more description, one of the things that I think is the biggest criteria for a potential bike park is terrain, and finding terrain, whether it's a hill to create flow lines and jump lines, pump tracks or different pieces, is really going to be vital to what we're looking for. And I think we're all pretty familiar with Laramie that there's only about 3 ridges that we're trying to shoot for to find some terrain on. But to my knowledge, Councilor Schuster, I'm not aware of what you're talking about, but we will look deeper into it.
It probably got moved. They kind of talked about, everybody kind of liked the skate park, and they wanted something similar to that for bike, and they had talked about doing something of that nature out there, but I think it's probably went away from the #1 site.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Schuster. One of the other parts of this is going to be kind of a location matrix to try to figure out where some of the best locations might be for this. I believe the area that I've heard referred to is down at Labonte Park, actually, across where potentially the city public works dirt piles are stored, and the envision there was a jump line and a pump track. And those are nice amenities, and they'd be great to be involved in that area, but I don't think it actually fulfills the full cycle of what you're looking at when you're looking at bike parks, and you're trying to include everything from potentially a top pump track to an adult pump track to flow lines to potential jump lines that could be 15 and 20 foot fly zones that people are traversing. I will never traverse those. Cindy will, Dan will.
You did when you were much younger. That'd be the best statement, because when I was young and living here in town, we had W Hill. There wasn't a house built out there. So we had everything they are looking.
Yeah, so that's kind of what you'll potentially see.
Any other questions from council? I guess I will say, one of the strong things about the Laramie community is our collaboration with our partners and what we are able to do for this community. It's not through the city by itself, by a long shot. It really is working with our partners, and this is a tremendous fundraising effort, and we really appreciate it. And I think that this could be a really good project to work with our Parks Tree and Rec Advisory Group on, and our Parks and Rec Director, and yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Honorable Mayor, we'd like to present this check. It is not the one that we're going to be cashing, that you'll be cashing, but if we could ask council to stand for a photo opportunity, we'd really appreciate that. So,
You want us to meet in the middle?
Yep, meet in the middle.
Nice and
Hold on.
easy for
Make the mayor
everybody.
taller. Okay, there we go. I'm good.
If you can stand up there. And,
Yep, that's the way it works.
Okay.
Perfect.
Pat, I can't, you're the only one I can't see.
Pat, we can't see you. There we go, get in there.
Real close.
I'm gonna take a couple pictures, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna take one more. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
There you go. Pretty cool.
All right, any other presentations, City Manager, or City Clerk? Okay. Announcements. City Manager?
Mayor, we have one announcement from my office regarding the city's mentorship program, and City Clerk Angie Johnson will make that announcement.
Good evening, council. We have for you one of our mentees going through the mentorship program. Her name is Catherine Radigan. She is the aquatics program coordinator. And if you all could maybe introduce yourselves, let her know what ward you're from. She's here to observe you tonight, kind of see what council does. She may or may not grade you, we'll see. But, so behave but Catherine's here if you wouldn't mind just kind of introducing yourselves a little bit.
Absolutely. Counselor Hanson, you want to start?
Klaus Hansen, Ward, what am I, Ward 3?
Ward 3.
I used to be Ward 1, that's confusing, okay.
Brian Schuster, Ward 3, and it's basically 15th East.
Dave Pelikas, and I'm in Ward 2, which is in the middle of our community.
Joe Shumway, Ward 2 also.
Jane Pierce, Ward 2.
Pat Gabriel, Ward 3.
Charles McKinney, Ward 1.
Andy Somerville, Ward 1. So, Catherine, can you tell us a little bit about why?
The program.
Yeah, what got you interested in the program? We're curious.
In the mentorship
Into the mentorship program, yeah.
I was recommended by Christy Andrews to be paired with a mentor, so I thought that it'd be an interesting opportunity to make connections with people within the city. At the recreation center, we're kind of separated a little bit from City Hall, so I thought that it'd be a good way to get to know people and see departments and see how the city works in a whole.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for coming tonight. I know this is the most exciting Tuesday night you'll ever have. So thank you very much, and good luck on the mentorship program. We look to see you in high places soon.
Thank you for
Thanks.
having me.
All right, any other announcements? No. Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll move on to item number 5, disclosures by city council members. Does anybody have any disclosures about items on the agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to item number 6, consideration of changes, and we'll go over to the vice mayor.
Okay. I move that the following changes to the agenda be approved. We actually have 3 changes tonight. On our consent agenda, we are going to delete item 8O. We're going to change item 19 on the regular agenda to just adjourn. That means we'll be deleting our executive session for this evening. And on our regular agenda, we are going to move item 16 to 10A.
Second?
Second by Councilor Shumway. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries. Vice mayor.
Okay, I move that the agenda be set as changed.
Second.
Second by Councilor Hanson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Vice mayor.
I move that the consent agenda be approved and that each specific action on the consent agenda be approved as indicated.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor McKinney. City clerk, can you do a roll call, please?
Gabriel,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Pelikas,
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That is 8 yeses, 0 noes, Your Honor.
Thank you. That motion carries. All right, moving on to the regular agenda. Item number 10. We'll go to Councilor Schuster.
Thank you very much. The title is Consideration of Selection of a New City Council Member, and I'm going to say in Ward 1, correct? And I move to bring the matter of appointment of a city council member on the floor for discussion.
Second.
Second by Councilor Hanson. All right, so discussion on the matter of city council member appointments. Go over the process again real quick. So we conducted interviews last week with 5 applicants. And tonight, we will have the chance right now for some discussion, if that's desired by council, clarify any questions on process again. After we're done with our discussion, council has each received a sheet for ranking of the council candidates, and we will take a short break where council will rank the candidates. We will provide those documents to our city clerk for scoring, and then we will come back from break as soon as those are scored. And then the highest scoring candidate, I will open that up for nominations for somebody to put that person on the floor, and then we can go from there. So first, does anybody have any questions about the process? Okay. Councilor Schuster.
Can I just make a statement that, so that everyone understands, the highest score anyone can receive is 5. You can only do it for one person on your ranking sheet, and then it must go 4, 3, 2, 1. You only have to score the people you would like to also is an option too. So I just wanted that everyone out there in our, people watching us, that they could understand the rankings then when they came out.
Thank you. That is correct. All right. So without any other questions, we will.
Thank the candidates now.
Yep. So first, I'll open up discussion by just saying thank you to the candidates. Again, I know I said this last week. This is not an easy process to put your name in the application pool for a council seat. It can be daunting and a little scary, but we truly appreciate the passion to serve your community and to step up to the plate. So I can't say thank you to everybody enough. I thought we had 5 excellent candidates tonight, and I think council will have a tough decision to make here shortly. So with that, I'll open it up. Council, is there any discussion about the candidates that you would like to have? Councilor Hanson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to say it was an honor to interview these candidates. I think we had a excellent choice, very difficult choice to make, because these were excellent candidates that presented themselves to us. And I'd like to, some of them are here, I think all of them are here. Thank you very much for putting your name in the ring and being such good candidates.
Thank you. Any other discussion by council? Councilor Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. I said yesterday on Laramie Live in place of the mayor, Mondays at the mayor, with David Settle that filled in for the mayor who was over in Cheyenne. But I said at that time that I think we had 5 excellent candidates. We could put all the names into a hat from my standpoint and pick one out, and I would be totally satisfied. We had a very diverse group, and they all bring unique items to the city council from their discussions and interviews, and I would be very satisfied with any one of the 5.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion from council? With council's permission, we do have members of the public here. Would we like to open up to public comment before we break for ranking?
Yeah.
Is that all right? Okay. So I'll open the floor right now to anybody that would like to make public comment regarding the selection of the council members. The council member. Please come forward. And again, if you can announce yourself for the record.
I'm the shy Sally Palmer, 715 South 11th Street. But I've lived here for 35 years, and I noticed that the transportation between West Side and West Laramie and Laramie is a huge issue. For example, SAFE is there and other organizations. And so whenever you choose, please choose someone who recognizes that we are a whole city, and that for some persons it's extremely difficult to transport themselves from the west side here, either for a job or for a job interview or to get groceries or whatever. So thank you for recognizing the differences between the sides of our one beautiful city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment regarding the selection? Going once? Okay. All right, seeing none. So council, at this time as city clerk, We will take about a 10-minute break. Council members, if you will please fill out your sheets and give them to the city clerk. No.
Your class will sit down there and turn them all upside
I
down.
want to explain, this is actually not voting, this is.
That's us three.
of the rankings given. So without further ado, I will ask council if there's anybody that is willing to make a motion to appoint Phoebe Stoner to the city council.
I make the motion that we elect Phoebe Stoner to city council, Ward 1.
Okay,
Second.
second by Vice Mayor. Any further discussion? Any comments from the public on this? And remind everybody, you do have to have 5 votes to be considered a successful motion for this. City Clerk, will you do roll call, please?
McKinney,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Polikis,
No. No.
Shumway,
No.
Schuster,
No.
Pierce,
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 5 yeses and 3 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the candidates. Congratulations, Ms. Stoner. You are now going to be shortly here appointed to City Council. But first of all, thank you again very much to the candidates that have applied and gone through the process. Very much appreciate it.
She has to be sworn in.
Not yet.
Nope. Just wait. Just a second. Just a second. Hold on.
One thing at a time.
So before we do the swearing in, we do need to offer senior council members the ability to move seats. Sounds silly, but we have to offer the option. So I will go in order of seniority and ask if you want to. You are welcome to the open seat. So first, Councilor Hanson.
I shall stay here because it's nice and warm.
Councilor Shumway.
I'm fine.
Councilor Polikis.
I'm fine.
Vice Mayor, you don't get to move. I don't get to move. I don't get to move. Councilor Schuster.
No.
Councilor McKinney, would you like to scoot over? And Councilor Gabriel, would you like
I
to scoot over?
certainly don't want to move over next to him.
Don't bite. Come on.
All right.
Awesome.
So with that, let's move to item 10A. And Councilor Schuster?
Okay, thank you. The title is Resolution 2017-67, appointing a member to fill a vacant seat in Council Ward 1. I move to approve Resolution 2017-67, appointing Phoebe Stoner to fill the vacant seat on council left with the registration of Vickery Henry in Ward 1 and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign.
Second.
Second by the Vice Mayor. Any further discussion? Any discussion by the public? Any public comments? All right, City Clerk, will you do roll call, please?
Schuster,
Yes?
Shumway,
Yes.
Polikis,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you. That motion carries. Ms. Stoner, would you care to join us, please? I'll show you where the secret door is. I'll have to come over here.
So ornery tonight, all of
You want to jump over the clouds?
She's gonna jump the dais.
She could probably jump. I certainly can't. I think my vertical jump's about 6 inches now.
Here's your seat.
Thank you.
I can still touch it.
Can you?
So at this point in time, the city clerk needs to swear you in.
Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
or affirm that I will support,
or affirm that I will support,
obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States
obey, and defend the Constitution of the United
and
States
the Constitution of the State of Wyoming,
and the Constitution of the State of Wyoming,
that I have not knowingly violated any law related to my election or appointment,
that I have not knowingly violated any law related to my election or appointment,
or caused it to be done by others,
or caused it to be done by others,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Good job.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sign those two, please.
He's gonna share the computer with you. Thank you.
City Clerk, are we ready?
We are.
All right, wonderful. Well, Ms. Stoner, here we go into the deep end of the pool. Item number 11, Counselor Hanson, please.
Just give me a second here. This is item 11, original ordinance 1974. I move to approve first reading of original ordinance number 1974, amending chapter 13.48 of the Laramie Municipal Code to regulate wastewater rates in the city of Laramie.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by the Vice Mayor. Director Smith.
Your Honor, the Mayor and members of council, consistent with our objectives of managing a sustainable wastewater system while offering reasonable cost of service rates, we retained the services of Raftalis Financial Consultants, also known as RFC, to conduct a cost of service rate study for the wastewater system. And their specific objective was to analyze the biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD strength, using test results, actual field test results that were conducted by wastewater staff of the Public Works Department. And you'll recall on October 24th, we presented this issue at a work session, and we showed that the existing rates were based on assumed values for BOD, and those were quite different than what we found to be true when we did the field testing. So, for example, in some of the commercial classifications, we were assuming 1,000 milligrams per liter BOD loading in the wastewater, when in fact it was more in the neighborhood of 420 milligrams per liter. So a significant difference there. So that's the nexus that we've used here to recommend a new rate structure. It's based on actual field testing of the BOD results. And if you'll recall, we presented 4 options at the work session, basically a do-nothing alternative, and others that use the existing rate structure and other combinations of that. Based on discussion with council that evening, we concluded that option number 4 was the preferred option, and that essentially reduces the rate classes down to 2 from a current 11. And there's a commercial rate class and a residential rate class. And you can see that in the draft ordinance. I wanted to point out a couple things. On page 2, you'll see the base rate. Those aren't changing from what would become effective on January 1st. So those didn't change. What is changing are the volumetric rates, and you can see those on page 3 of the draft ordinance. And you can see that residential volumetric rates go from what would be $4.21 per 1,000 gallons to $4.41. So a slight increase there. Some of the commercial rate classes go down from, say, $6.57 to $4.60. So if you look in the far right-hand column, you'll see 2 rates, $4.41 for residential and $4.60 per 1,000 gallons for commercial. So that's the primary difference. And I did also want to point out that the consultant was charged with the task of creating a revenue-neutral rate structure. So we're not trying to capture more or additional revenue over what was planned with the previously approved 2018 rates. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Director Smith? Councilor Schuster.
Kind of a question, comment. Somebody sent us a letter saying, great, now when our summer water usage goes up, this will go up with it. So I want it stated for the record how we determine our sewer rates, because we do it midwinter, supposedly when you are not watering your lawn, so that the rate the summertime does not then show the increase to be just because you're trying to keep your lawn green.
Your Honor, the Mayor and Councilmember Schuster, that's an excellent point. The way we determine volumetric rates for wastewater is that we look at the wintertime consumption, January, February, March, and that is what is established as your base rate or your indoor usage, and that's a common method among municipalities and special districts that have volumetric rates for wastewater. So that's the amount of water that is consumed by a home that we use to establish their wastewater rates. It completely discounts irrigation usage altogether, so that is not a factor. Very good point.
Any other questions for Director Smith? Councilor Hanson?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think we should point out for the public, you mentioned the word revenue neutral. With any kind of future budgeting, of course, it's always a guessing game, and we hope that it is according to the plan that was presented to us, revenue neutral. I think we'll have to see over a longer period whether it indeed is revenue neutral, because we are combining, of course, 11 former classes into 2 classes right now. So you will fall either in class 1 or into class 2, and we know, of course, how many users we had in each class before, but I think, to be honest, revenue neutrality is a bit of a guessing game here. We hope that it is indeed revenue neutral.
Director
That's a
Brown?
hard one to say.
Yeah, Mayor, I think from Ref. Tilia's point, they had a projection based on water consumption by class code. They knew what classes for our 18 rate that was going in, and they converted those over to the new rates to actually try to make it from the plan to the plan revenue neutral. As Councilor Hanson said, no one can project what that's going to be, but I think from their first plan, they've had our consumption, they've had the same consumption based on these new rates, and I think it's going to be pretty close.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councilor Gabriel?
Thank you, Mayor. Director Smith, I was just curious about the 11 down to 2, and when we talked in the work session about a lot of these were developed because of the university. And I'm just wondering if you would comment about, do you see any possibilities that we might have some inconsistencies there from 11 to 2 with a lot of the variations from the university?
Director Brown? Director Smith?
I'm going to punt, sorry.
Director Brown?
Mayor, I guess the question, I'm just still kind of thinking about the question, but basically, the rates for the university classes are a little higher, but it's based on strength loading, and I think it's back to a lot of it is the residential and how he said it was balancing, and the university residential is going to go into our residential numbers. But if you look at the rates, and I don't have the current rates, I mean, they were going to go up. I don't think the classes are, the number of classes is the issue. I mean, we tried to make it simpler. They're merging the rate in the test loading. So, yes, there might be some benefits, but the testing is, if you want to say this, is difficult to test, and so it's easier to track in total by commercial and total by residential. I think that's what Ref. Tilius was trying to get at. And so I think this option is a fair option for everyone. I think it brings it down more to the center. If I
Okay.
answered your
Yep.
question, I don't know. if
That
I-
makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Staff? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any comments from the public on this item? Okay, seeing none, discussion by council. Any council comments or discussion? City Clerk, can you do a roll call, please?
Hanson,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Polikis,
Yes.
Stoner,
Yes.
Shumway,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That is 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. That motion carries, and that will be back for 2 further readings. On to item number 12, Councilor McKinney.
I move to approve the Council Resolution 2017-68, certifying the Planning Commission action amending the future land use map, map 3.2, the 2007 Laramie Comprehensive Plan for the property described in the resolution, generally located east of the intersection of Evans Street, Irma Court, west of Interstate 80, for an area approximately 1.9 acres in size, changing the future land use designation from UR, urban residential, to SC, suburban commercial, based on the findings of fact and conclusion of law, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the resolution.
We have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Gabriel. Planner Bloom.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, this is a resolution that's intended to certify a Planning Commission action regarding the land use plan amendment. I'm going to go ahead and pull up a copy of the, not the PowerPoint, nope, not this.
Oh, sorry, what do you want?
Sorry, I'm going to go ahead and pull up a copy of the City Council resolution real quick so I can further describe what this is that's going on here. This is the resolution you've all seen in your packet, and there's an attachment actually here at the very last page here. What they're requesting is a land use plan amendment to change this area you see right here in the hashed marked area from the future land use plan designation of urban residential to suburban commercial. This land use plan was filed in conjunction with a rezoning application to rezone some of the lands in the area from B1 and R3 to B2. That item is next on your agenda. When it comes to land use plan amendments and comprehensive plan amendments, the Planning Commission is the body that is the decision maker as defined in state statutes. That decision-making ability is put into our development code, our land use regulations, specifically section 1506.060, section X, regarding comprehensive plan amendments. The City Council's role in this decision is to certify that the Planning Commission made the recommendation in accordance with the rules and the regulations. Pursuant to subsection 1506.060X3D12, that's a mouthful, the City Council may postpone action on the land use plan amendment, or they may ask for the Planning Commission to reconsider or reconsider this item, basically do additional review and study. When the Planning Commission looked at this land use plan amendment, they looked at the future development in the area, and they're required to make their findings based on the required findings that you'll find in the staff report. On the Planning Commission staff report, page 3, there is a summary of the justifications regarding this amendment. So these are the items that they found in the affirmative to approve the land use plan amendment. So the reason for this request is because the applicant, the developer, is actually looking at acquiring these 3 lots. Presently, these 2 lots are zoned B1 business, and they can support a variety of business uses. And this one is zoned this one's zoned B1, and these 2 are zoned R3 multifamily. So what they're requesting is this land use plan amendment to enable them to zone this southern property to a commercial use to allow for construction of a future mini storage complex. The next item, the zoning item, actually will feature a presentation that will detail what their conceptual plan is for that site. So regarding this land use plan amendment, the Planning Commission has approved the amendment to the land use plan, which changes this to suburban commercial. So what your action would be is to certify their approval. Staff recommends that you certify their approval by passing this resolution because the Planning Commission decision was based on required findings. In the event that you wish to not certify it, the City Council would have to state specific reasons why there is not a certification and specific items they would like the Planning Commission to, or in the event that they were to remand it back to the Planning Commission, specific items they would like them to further review or study. With that, I'm open for any questions you may have on the land use plan amendment.
Questions? Councilor
Thank you,
Hanson?
Your Honor. Can you describe the similar area just below that? That is that zoned for housing? Just to the south of it, there's another small addition in the red area. Well, now it's gone.
Yep, that's right.
Coming back, right?
Honorable Mayor and Councilor Hanson, sorry, I will go ahead and real quickly address what you're asking. What we saw in this map here,
Yeah.
this is the land use plan. So this says that in this area, the Planning Commission will support any zoning changes that are within this auto-urban commercial land use category type. Or this is suburban commercial, sorry. So this allows for B1 zoning, B2 zoning, C2 zoning, and also NB zoning. Sorry, not C2. This area, your auto-urban commercial, this is your more heavily auto-dominated. This allows for all the zone districts I mentioned, plus the C2 commercial, which is your larger outdoor storage, car dealerships, bigger box retail, contractors' yards, those types of things. So in this area in the land use plan, we would support, planning staff would support, and the Planning Commission would anticipate that this changes to business zoning. As you can see, the zoning and the land use, they don't really match the development in the area. We have some single-family homes that are actually developed in the area along Irma Court, and this that's shown as future commercial. Just jumping ahead real quickly to the next item, this is the zoning map. So this is the actual regulatory, the regulatory element of land use. This is zoning. This is what you can do in your land. When this was platted initially, Pearson Court is the actual zone district boundary for business. So everything on the north side of Pearson Court, including Irma Court, is all zone B1 business. As you can see here, this is the subject property for the development. That northern lot is zone B1 presently. These two are zoned R3. This one lot is the one that is the subject of the land use plan amendment because this is already shown as future suburban commercial in the land use plan. So again, here we go, there's that versus the zoning on the ground.
What I'm actually talking about is this area, which looks very similar to the one up there. That is housing, isn't it?
Apartments and housing.
Apartments?
Honorable Mayor and Councilor Hanson, immediately south of the land use plan amendment, there is one vacant lot that is shown as as urban residential on our land use plan and zoned as multifamily. And then further to the south, there is a cul-de-sac at the end of Westview Court that is developed with fourplexes. And on Pearson Court and Irma Court, Irma Court's all duplex structures. Evans is all duplex structures. Westview and Pearson, there's a mix of duplex and single-family structures located within that development. So yes, you have a lot of single-family attached and a couple of apartments that are closer to the interstate here.
Vice Mayor, oh, sorry,
I have
Councilor
one
Hanson,
more
please.
question, and the other question is, for this area, this is what we're talking about, to change it to a commercial section. What is the access? Is the access, how would you access this area? That's unclear to me at this point.
Honorable Mayor and Councilor Hanson, the way this development, any development in this area would access would be off of Evans Street. YDOT would prohibit any access off of Interstate 80.
These green stripes are all roads.
Yeah.
Correct.
Streets, not roads, streets.
The applicant has indicated that they are in the process of doing a lot consolidation application that would actually consolidate all of their lots into one for future development. With that being the case, they would be allotted one access or possibly a second one for fire access. They've indicated that they would be putting that access and showing their concept plans up here closer to the end of Centennial Drive.
Vice Mayor?
So, Charles, this appears, if you could go back to your zoning map, I have to say I'm a little concerned about what some of the changes are occurring here, and when we're that close to residential, and then moving to a industrial or B2, what are some, and you said by statute, the Planning Commission has the authority to do this, and you said if we were to remand it back to the Planning Commission for further consideration, we'd have to come up with reasons to do that, right? Legal reasons to do that. Or we could move to postpone, right? Those are our options.
Honorable Mayor
Did I
and
hear you?
Councilor Pierce, that is correct. You could postpone to a date certain.
So tell me, because I feel like we might be creating a bigger mess in what appears to be a residential area that is actually zoned to be in a business area. What are some of our legal options here?
Honorable Mayor and City Councilor Pierce, I would like to just add on real quick. Regarding legal options, number one, when it comes to a land use plan amendment, the goal of the future land use plan is to try to get properties to move in that direction within a 20-year time frame. So this lot right here that you see, the land use plan is showing that as commercial, so all signs point to us being obligated to approve that. Regarding the existing zoning not blending with the neighborhood, they do all have the ROB overlay, which is the residential overlay for business, so they are allowed to do that. Property owners would be eligible to apply for rezoning to bring themselves into more of conformance with the base zone district. However, it doesn't matter since they have the overlay district. In the event that you were to remand the land use plan element back to the Planning Commission, chances are very high that the exact same resolution would come back because they have made their findings and there really isn't a significant change or omission that would result in a different change. Say you were to not certify action or not certify this, that would put us into even more problems because the applicant could appeal the no certification and it would go to district court where they would essentially say you failed to act accordingly. Regarding the comp plan process, the public hearings per our municipal code, the development code, and through state statutes are all performed at the Planning Commission public hearing. This item did require that notice be sent to all residents within 300 feet. So there are 40 folks that were on the mailing list that represents folks on Pierce Street, Irma Court, Evans, and some on Westview were actually captured by that notice. The applicant's representative is here and they can speak in detail about notice that they had provided to the neighborhood back in September before filing, because we had encouraged them to talk to the neighborhood residents prior to filing of the application.
Okay, so, it's, I think we're in a tough spot, to be perfectly honest. I mean, to put a light industrial or storage facility next to a residential area, I gotta tell you, I have problems with that. And I don't know how to figure out what to do here.
So I want to keep on questions here, and I have some questions for Mr. Bloom as well. So Counselor Schuster, question?
Was the normal sign stuck out there, the right sign, the red sign, excuse me, that says, property under review for a project? That sign was out there too, so if anybody had a question, had the number so they could call you guys?
Honorable Mayor and Councilor Schuster, yes, the development proposal under review sign was posted on the property.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I ask mine? Counselor Palikas?
I guess I'd direct this to the planning, to Mr. Bloom. Throughout our community, is it not common to see R3 and B1 abutting each other as a transition into heavier densities, and also as a transition on the residential side into lighter densities?
Honorable Mayor and Councilor Palikas, B1 and R3 typically are zoning districts that are adjacent to each other on our zoning map. They do lend themselves to a natural transition. R3 is essentially a step down from the B1 zone district. The B1 zone district, the buffer yard requirements between the B1 and the R3 are pretty significant, so there would be some required landscaping and everything to create buffer yards from the uses.
I had one other question too. If I recall, and in particular, if we're talking about storage complexes, if they are, if I recall this right, and tell me if I am right, if they are put into a B1 zone, they have a much, much higher standard when it comes to aesthetic looks and landscaping and so forth. Am I correct on that?
Honorable Mayor and Councilor Palikas, yes, you are, but I just want to remind you guys that the request for rezoning is for B2. The B1 would require a conditional use permit review, a public review by the Planning Commission, where they would essentially approve all of the exterior elements of the site, the fencing, the buffer yard, the landscaping, the building design and such.
Any other questions? Counselor Hanson?
Thank you, Honor. I'm trying to put my finger on it, but I can't find it as far as public comments were concerned. I think I read a statement that there was one person who was for this change, and then there was a statement, a further statement, there were several people who were neutral on this matter, and then there was a very enigmatic statement saying there were several people who were against it, but no numbers were given. This was kind of curious to me, and I can't find it right now. Whether I have a different document right now, I have no idea, because I read the public comment section. But there is this statement, there were several people who spoke against it, but there is no number given. I don't know, was it 10? Was it 5? Was it 3? Was it 20? I have no idea. You see the statement?
Honorable Mayor and Councilor Hanson, regarding public comment, the public comment you would see in the staff report for Planning Commission.
Yeah.
This is what was assembled prior to the Planning Commission packet being published. We had received one public comment early on the process after the developer had posted notice on the doors. They indicated they'd canvassed the entire neighborhood. So they had indicated that they supported the development of a mini storage complex there because they had indicated they thought that was better than what could be there, multifamily or restaurants, other commercial uses, stuff like that. We did receive two comments that were just inquiries asking what was going on, where they had indicated they wanted to speak with their neighbors to form an opinion. They were alerted of the public hearing in front of the Planning Commission. No one had shown up at the Planning Commission meeting for that. We did receive a comment this week from a neighbor living on Irma Court that did have some concerns with development in the area. The concerns on Irma Court were the density of the residential units on that cul-de-sac, a desire for the city to purchase vacant land at the end of the cul-de-sac for a park, and also a concern for any commercial development that would occur on that east side of Evans Street. They did indicate specific concern with just viewing a mini storage complex from Irma Court. So those are the public comments we have received regarding this item. No one has submitted a comment in writing. If they had, we would include that in our council correspondence. Sorry, one of the items, that's a different subdivision. We have a public comment via email that's attached to the agenda. Just making sure it wasn't this one. Thank you. So that's a summary of the public comments we've received.
Other questions? Okay, so I have lots. Okay, so my first question is exactly how many rezonings has this neighborhood in general gone under since its inception?
Honorable Mayor, I think Paul Hoffman may better be able to address that one. I believe, and we can redirect that to him, I believe this was actually all zoned business at one time, and he rezoned it to R3, probably wishing he hadn't at this time, because he wanted to do a multifamily development there. There have been at least 3 or 4 different iterations of a multifamily development on this half that have come through that just have failed to materialize. And this area actually was previously approved for a mini storage unit back in 2000 and I want to say 3.
Okay.
So he's gone through a couple. I'll just redirect that to him. He'll be able to speak to that to verify if I was accurate there, if he nodded his head.
So, second question. So the city code requires every address within 300 feet, right? So I know that there's been some statements that the entire neighborhood got notified, and I would seriously push back against that. That would only catch just the first 2 houses on Westview, Pearson, and the frontage lots. And the lots that are on Evans Street, between Irma and Centennial Drive, those are all duplexes, they're built. There's only 3 that are occupied right now. There's like 6 that are vacant. So there's nobody in those residences right now to notify. So I guess I want to clarify that. It's just the city only sent out messages or notes to the people within 300 feet, right?
Honorable Mayor and City Councilors, or Honorable Mayor, yes, we send out notice to people within 300 feet. Okay. Looking at our key, it's probably about to the M and Irma.
Yeah.
Right, clips the corner here. So you're looking at area here. We did use the same notice for the zoning as we did for the land use plan amendment, just to expedite staff time and not have to duplicate, because they're all the same mailing. So we did pick up the commercial properties up here as well. And that was 40 folks were on that list.
Right, 40 properties, but there's not 40, like they said, those 6 that are on Evans right now are not occupied.
Right.
So, questions on the justification regarding the amendment. So I want to go through these one at a time. So the first justification is the proposed amendment is based on a change in projections or assumptions from those on which the comprehensive plan is based. Could you explain that a little bit more in detail of how we've decided that the comprehensive plan is no longer applicable to that corner?
I have to take a real quick look at this. Now, essentially, what we've looked at when looking at the land use plan is we look at the availability of commercial lands and stuff within the community. This comprehensive plan was put together back in 2007, 2008. At that time, we had ample commercial land. We had ample suburban commercial land use category as well as residential. Throughout the time, essentially, this property was envisioned to be multifamily. Over the last few years, I'm working with the developer. The multifamily development wasn't able to occur. It seemed like it wasn't the right fit. So we've essentially looked at the development and said, is this where multifamily should go? Based on how the market has changed and what the developer is looking at, it appears that a commercial type of use may be more appropriate. That commercial use could be a buffer between the interstate and the residential areas to the west. So essentially, it's just saying, hey, this has been this way for about 10 years. It's not developing, it's been ready for development. It's time to look at a change.
Second one is the proposed amendment is based on the identification of new issues, needs, or opportunities that are not adequately addressed in the comp plan. And the staff response is the proposed amendment allows the property owner the ability to increase the commercial development in the area. That seems odd to me because this is primarily a residential area with frontage on I-80. So it would make for an ideal development in that area. Is there anything that I'm missing with that?
Now, again, Honorable Mayor, this item is essentially just placement of a commercial land use area between the interstate and the residences, just to prevent having single-family homes or apartments just adjacent to that interstate. So it would serve as a buffer yard, like a buffer between the two uses.
So my question is, but in this area, we already have homes that are adjacent to the interstate. So what's the difference between these lots and the ones that are already built out that back up against the interstate? And there's also numerous places around town where we have homes that back up to the interstate.
That's correct. Regarding the land use plan amendment, that's just a finding that we had found.
Okay. The next one is the proposed amendment may result in unique development opportunities that offer substantial benefits to the city. That one I struggle with. What is the unique benefit of a storage area butted up against a residential area?
Honorable Mayor, with this, what we're looking at is, this is a service to residents within the neighborhood and within West Laramie. Most of our storage units at this time are located in Central Laramie, North Laramie, and South Laramie. So this is able to serve a population. So this is additional retail business opportunities in that area.
So my question would be if we need them in West Laramie, which we have several on the south side, or the south side of Snowy Range. My question is, if this is for a B2 use, why is it not more appropriate to put on the north side of the hotels on the land that's already zoned B2? Why would we not be pushing it that direction instead of trying to alter residential neighborhoods for it?
Honorable Mayor, I would let that question go to the applicant for their choice on the land. Is likely just cost or something, but they'd probably give a better reason for their reason for selecting that site.
Okay. All right. I think that takes all my questions. Any other questions? Okay, Ms. Bloom, you can sit down now. Thank you. So we'll invite the applicant up if they'd like to address anything, or if we have questions for the applicant. So I'll let you go first, and then we'll open it up to questions.
I'm Paul Hoffman, and I'm the original developer of Westfield. I think I started in about 2002, and some of the different comments, one of them that you asked, Mayor, was the number of different zonings that we've done. I'm going to have to ask Charles or Derek this question, but when I started this, the city engineering department and the planning department were not always on the same page. None of the people that are there now were there then. And so you can see diagonal lines that are cut through the property. Some of it's R2M, some of it's B1. It's just kind of what I inherited, and that's part of the reason that Irma Court line, it's not on this particular screen. Can you help me get it to that screen? But so that's just kind of what I got, and there was never a push by engineering to make any changes to what that line is. That's why where it says Irma there, thank you. It's at an angle. So we had R2M on the south part, which mixed the possibility of mobile homes with single family. But the other thing I would say, and we'll speak to that last question you had too, Mayor, was the north part of the property was always planned to be commercial, and the south part was always residential, and we were bringing the residential north while we brought the commercial south to come to a point where we kind of buffer both the commercial from the residential. That's why Irma Court is all duplexes, it's a little higher density, separating Pearson Court and South from the commercial to the north. Hospice, we worked hard to get them that location, and I think that's a beautiful facility. Again, along the Evans Street, that faces the interstate, so those were all put in as twin homes also. I'm going to bounce back to another question that is going to get asked of Charles, but back when the Rob overlay was done, they only did it on the area where Irma Court is. They didn't do the same thing for the properties across the street, which the Rob overlay was the old pyramid-shaped zoning. So had they done that, this wouldn't have been an issue at all. And back at that time, I, as the owner of the entire property, didn't have any say in what that zoning looked like. It just is what I got. And I don't know if Charles or Derek would agree or disagree with how I'm stating that, but it just kind of, as I was doing the development, it's kind of like, okay, explain what Rob overlay is and why it's only on, I call it Block 8, Fox Edition, but on the north part of Pearson, why isn't it over on the interstate side? So that's what we're working with. And then to kind of go back again, that nobody ever thought it was important to rezone everything, and that's why you have Irma Court with a zone line down the middle of it. So I can't really speak to why that was or wasn't done that way. A couple of other questions I was going to run back through. I'm pretty sure the only rezoning I've done there is the one that Charles mentioned I probably wished I wouldn't have done, which was take this exact lot from a B1 to an R2 or R3. I did that probably getting ahead of myself, outsmarting myself, thinking I wanted to put residential in there. The residential just never came or never happened. So what happened was the group that had the self-storage to the north, they needed more land, so that's why they came down to the south and talking about the lots that we're dealing with now. What else on that? We do plan on consolidating that all into one lot, so erasing all the property lines, so everything from the very top of Westfield down to that hatched area on the south would be one lot. The notices, I did get a chance to speak to the mayor this afternoon about residents in the entire subdivision did not feel like they had adequate notice. I called the developer's employee who took notices around on September 20th. He knocked on every door in Westfield during the middle of the day, granted there might not be people there, and did his best to put a flyer where it wouldn't blow away. He pointed out that it was a very windy day that day, but he did tell me that he put flyers, including the apartments, including the hotels, businesses. He either talked to or put them out there. So that was the feedback that I was given, that we went beyond the 300 feet that we were required to do in the mailing and gave them to everybody. And then, for example, too, on the ones that you mentioned are empty along the street there, I believe there's only 2 empty now. And whoever owned those properties when the mailing went out, which is River Valley Builders in Casper, they would have received those notices. And so I have to assume they got them. Never had any feedback from them. Let's see. Personally, I think this is the best type of facility you could ask for in this location. All of the buildings, for the self-storage, and it's probably jumped to the next piece, but all of the buildings face in, so when you drive by there, you will not look at doors. They're nice metal stucco panels on the outside. There will be a manager's office that you have to drive into. There's, I think, 7 parking places for this office. They do sell retail there if you need moving boxes. The office hours are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday, I believe. They're closed on Sunday. You can call and have permission to be granted to go into the facility after hours, but it's not just a card reader that lets you in at any time during the day. So very low impact. Multifamily is the other option there that hasn't proven to be a good one, but it would have a much higher traffic count. You know, I'm also an investor in this self-storage, and the entire Westfield has kind of been my project that I'm quite proud of having done here in Laramie. So I want to make sure we keep doing things right out there. So I have other land that I have no intention of putting up an eyesore or a use that wouldn't be compatible with the entire subdivision, kind of in my original vision of it. The quick question too on the property to the north, the B2, you know, I just, the only thing I can say is I have nothing to do with that property. You know, I think it's zoned to be another, or planned to be another car dealership, which I would welcome that activity out there. Let's see. I think I caught your question, so I'll ask you if you have any other questions of me.
So, open it up to council members' questions for the applicant. Vice Mayor.
So you don't really see any other solution of moving the storage sheds maybe a little more, I guess, north, or up in this picture to kind of get them farther away from the residential?
Well, we might jump to a slide to address that, but real quick, I think oh, thanks, Charles. They probably have a negative connotation because of a lot of what you see, especially in Laramie, or I would say there's only 2 nice self-storage facilities in Laramie right now, the 2 newest ones. The other ones are your more stereotypical garage doors. There's a padlock that the owner doesn't even have a key. It's just the tenant of the user. They're all metal. They're all, you know, they are what they are. Ours plans to have elements to draw, and you could go to that if you wouldn't mind. Elements to catch your eye. You know, it's a modern looking facility. I can bring pictures of 2 of them that they've done in Fort Collins to show more of the material types and whatnot. That's what we're working on now. I think I mentioned all the doors face in, unless you see something through a connection between 2 buildings or something, you won't see any doors. So it's a fortress style where everything faces in. 2 of the buildings are planned to be conditioned space, which means they're heated and cooled, so that there are no doors on those other than the pedestrian door you go in to then walk down a hallway. So those are very, you know, simple, nice looking buildings. Everything's landscaped on the outside. We actually have the landscape plan, I think, done or pretty close, included in the property. So, you know, I really would like to say that it's not this, maybe the stereotype that you've thought about when you think about self-storage. It's kind of gone to a next level. I mentioned to the mayor today, in today's business, you want to make these feel so comfortable and safe that a woman by herself would be comfortable going there at night. And they have security, they have card readers, not anybody just goes in there. There's no electricity in them, so you don't have people doing things in there that they shouldn't be, you know, other than what you can monitor and so forth. You have to have background checks. I mean, it's not maybe what a lot of us think about when we think of self-storage.
So if I want, you would have to do a background check on me if I wanted to rent a self-storage? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, a credit check. Yeah, a credit check.
A credit check?
Yeah, not a background check.
Not like a
Not like an
background
apartment.
criminal background. I mean, I was curious, okay.
Other questions for the applicant?
I guess
Councilor Plicas?
I have a question. And I know we're starting to blend these 2 together, but I think
We are, I think it's unavoidable.
I think it's unavoidable.
Go ahead.
I agree. But to go back to what I asked Mr. Bloom. I know that, for instance, I know that up in the Turner Tract, there will be a storage unit up there. There's planned to be a storage unit up there right next to the residential. But again, it's my understanding that because of the zoning and because of the developer, it's going to be very similar to what you're describing. Is there any difference between what you're describing and what could go on a B1 zone versus this being a B2 zone?
I don't think there would be any difference, but I
And maybe
can't speak to their
Charles,
project.
maybe Mr. Burns is better to answer that question. And I bring it up only because we have approved this type of thing that's very close to residential. And I also bring it up because these storage complexes, if they're done right, are compatible with the neighborhood, and that people that rent these like to have them reasonably close to their, because they use it as excess storage for their belongings, and they don't want to drive across town just to pick up their lawnmower, or just to pick up their Christmas decorations, or whatever they can't put in their house. And that's what a lot of them are used for, is for overflow of what they can't fit in their garage, and so forth. So, having said that, I'll go back to that question.
Honorable Mayor and Council, regarding the difference between B1 and B2, it would essentially just add additional process for the developer where there would be one more level of public review in front of the Planning Commission on the final design. It would let the neighborhood, members of the public, know specifically where trees are going to go, if the building's going to look like this, and any additional modifications in the future would again have to go back to the Planning Commission for modification. The last storage unit complex we had that went through the conditional use permit review process, that was actually located on South 9th Street, adjacent to the Fall Creek development neighborhood. That was one that went through the conditional use permit process. The last one we didn't have go through a conditional use permit process was on Cedar Street, over at the Antelope Meadows one. So those are two differences you see. One went through the conditional use process, that's South 9th Street, so they had to comply with the fencing standards and stuff like that. They didn't do the fortress style. And the other one that didn't go through that process is over on Cedar Street. So again, for them, it's about another 5 to 6 week process just to submit an application after the rezoning.
Thank you.
Real quick, if you don't mind, I'll show you some other pictures. I was just going to try to advance the screen or
Yeah, it was.
Mouse.
Just use the mouse that you have.
All right. Let's show you my technical skills. So this is what I was talking about on the fortress style. So everything kind of goes around it. We talked a little bit about this being an entryway to Laramie too, because you're coming in off of I-80 from the north. And so we're sensitive to that of what you would see. There will be a tower element that you saw in that first picture on both the interstate side and then on the side where the office is. Again, we're trying to have a nice looking exterior all the way around. You can see the landscape buffer. We have quite a bit of landscaping on that side because there's 3 fairly large easements that probably total 60 or 70 feet there. So it does sit back a ways from the interstate. The 2 buildings in the middle of the development, those are conditioned space, and that's an office where you pull in and park before you go into the gated area on it. That's just some of the plantings. We can get more artist renderings on it, but we talk, again, why I truly believe this is the best use for that lot there is you don't have people up against the interstate in apartments, because that would really be about the only thing you could put there. You have a much lower traffic count. They project less than 10 cars an hour using this. I would argue it's probably less than half of that. And you don't have big spikes in traffic counts coming and going morning and at night. Most of the buildings, probably all of them, are less than 14 feet high, probably 12 feet or less along the street line. So you're not going to see a big tall building being offensive to the neighbors to the west of it. I talked to some of the different business owners there, or managers like at Hospice and at Fairfield, and I got positive feedback from what they would like to see activity happen out there. I do want to go back to the comment I made at the beginning where I kind of inherited some of the different zoning and whatnot, and that's why that lot, which I don't know how to go back to, that we're talking about in the first part of this presentation. Maybe ask you, Charles, how did that lot kind of the suburban, it's kind of down there by itself, so I can understand why the question's coming up. Why is that one different than the rest of them?
Honorable Mayor and Council, the reason why this whole area was shown as suburban commercial was simply the step down type of philosophy from the interchange, where the interchange was the heavy commercial and then stepped down to a suburban commercial, which is described as being more landscaped, less auto dependent, more neighborhood friendly, and then it steps down to the single family. So it's just in the whole pyramid of land use, where you try to have the intense use at the interchange and you sort of just step down.
But maybe what I'd ask is, why did we do Rob overlay on the left side of Evans and the other zoning on the right side?
Honorable Mayor and Council, the reason for the residential overlay for business was a concern from a lot of property owners that had property that was its own business and once houses were allowed to be there, that in the event of catastrophe or fire, or even financing for a new mortgage, that since they weren't a permitted use, it created issues when it came to financing. So the properties on that east side or the west side of Evans were put into this overlay district to basically make all the uses conforming. The west side, at that time, we were just looking at existing or planned uses, and it was just simply omitted.
Right. And would you agree that I didn't really have say in how that was going to get zoned? It was kind of a master plan that the city was doing at that time to lay out the zoning.
I'd agree, yeah. The ROB overlay was in the Unified Development Code as a one-size-fits-all. We took an inventory of areas that were zone business and developed with residences, and those areas that we could tell, they were all turned to ROB. There are some that we have forgotten about or we missed. You've seen several residential overlay for business requests come by in recent years where it's a single homeowner wants to add a garage or add on to his house where they might be on Snowy Range Road or other areas where we've added those on as a case-by-case basis.
Questions for me?
Other questions for Mr. Hoffman? Councilor McKinney?
So it's not a 24-hour facility?
No. If
It's
you
gonna be
need
like
in
a-
after an emergency, you can call the manager.
So when is it going to open and when is it going to
I
close?
believe it's 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, closed on Sunday.
He'll have sales, like you said, boxes,
Yeah.
styrofoam, whatever, for
Correct.
pictures, TV, stuff like that?
Yep.
Are they going to be doing truck rentals or anything out of there?
I don't think they do any truck rentals.
Any other questions for Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple, hold
Oh,
on, I have a
all right,
couple more.
all right.
I just want to give everybody else a chance first. So my question first is, can you build multifamily there as you intended?
Zoning wise?
Well, just in general, I know that is something that has been, this neighborhood has been expanding slowly over the last 15 years, and it seems that multifamily is the way that has been developing.
I guess my answer would be yes, you could. I do believe that we will do multifamily on the last lot down below there, probably a townhome type of design. Not what you might think of as apartments, but more of a two-story that way. So that is a possibility on that lot. The ones to the north.
This one.
Yes, sir. But the rest of them, that's the only viable thing we've found so far is the self-storage.
Next question, so you're working with a company that's a national company to come in and do this?
Yeah, they have, yes.
So I looked up their stuff, and they are primarily, looks like they're in Texas.
That's where they
with
were
a-
started,
Yep, with a few in Colorado.
correct?
So my question is, so one of the things with storage sheds is they look great, or mini storage, they look great and pretty and beautiful for the first 5 years, maybe 8. By year 10, things start to go downhill, and that's where, I mean, that's where this goes. So in 10 years, what guarantees or assurances can the neighborhood have that this is not going to get, because we all know businesses get resold, right? And that's the hope. Businesses are successful, they get resold and go down the line. So what guarantee does this neighborhood have that we're not going to have this terrible eyesore in 10 or 15 years that's not maintained, that's done on the cheap, that's now open 24/7, that's causing all of these issues within the neighborhood?
Well, the material types that we would use would be, typically it's a 20-year finish on metal paints, so the buildings won't deteriorate like the paints you see on, the stereotypes I was talking about earlier. So you don't see fading like you see on 20-year-old buildings, buildings that were done 20 years and older ago. The Kynar finishes that they put on today's buildings will last a lot longer. You'll have mature landscaping in 15 years. Based on what the city requirements are for landscaping. What I've learned in this process is self-storage is a business. This is not a real estate thing. This is a business thing. And so we're business people that we want to have the nicest facility in town. And so we want to take business away from other facilities. So it's just like any other, even residential. A new apartment is going to take people from an old basement apartment, and that's what you want to see happen, and that's why then people come back in and they fix up the old basement apartment. So our business here is no different than any other business where we have to earn our, these people are really just oftentimes month-to-month renters, so we have to make it attractive for them to want to come. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll have security lighting, security cards. I spoke to this earlier today, is I can't and won't make a guarantee as to what will happen in 10 or 15 years, any different than the house across the street that is there and you can't get the guy to paint his exterior. And so we're no different, other than we hope to have a successful facility that creates income that can pay for upgrades and maintenance, because we have all that built into our pro forma on this facility. Is upkeep and maintenance is probably even better than most small businesses, and certainly residential, where they may not carry a budget for those in their annual budgets, but we have that.
Will we always have a local presence with a actual, I didn't know you guys are going to hire somebody to run the station, but because this is a national company, what happens, they come in, and we've seen this with some of the other developments in town, they come down, they plop down a big tall building, and they skedaddle, and we have problems with it. And how do we prevent against that?
Yeah, there has to be an on-site manager that will be a resident of Laramie, and probably 2 other staff people that will be residents of Laramie. The way this company is not as big as, I think you're saying nationally. They have facilities in Texas, which is where the father started the business. His son in his 50s now moved to Colorado Springs and started building them along the Front Range. They've opened another division in Fort Collins with a young man who's in charge of this project, and 2 of them in Fort Collins. They have a centralized billing system and a lady who's in charge of all the operations that I think works out of Longmont. And so it's not as big as you might say when you say national, because it's really only 2 states, with Wyoming, Laramie being the first one in Wyoming. I'm guessing they got 12 of these. I don't know, I didn't look that closely at the website, but from what I saw, it's 10 or 12.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Let's go for comments from the public on this item. All right, seeing none, discussion for council. Councilor Hanson?
Thank you, Honor. I think what we find, of course, is the usual problem with changes of this nature. People say, okay, and then it comes about, and all of a sudden, there's upsetment, if that is a word, because I didn't expect it to happen, or I didn't pay attention to it. And of course, now we are in the process, or we're at the point where the Planning Commission has done due diligence of gone around, asked the neighbors, and if I understand this right from Charles, we got 2 comments or whatever, 3 comments. Now, all of a sudden, we find we don't want it. Well, we should have probably gotten involved earlier before this whole thing marched this far. And this is what I'm concerned about, I personally feel very hard pressed to say to the Planning Commission, you haven't done due diligence, because they have done due diligence. And I don't, I think I brought up several points before. The access, I think, is kind of dismal to this thing. There's a commercial area, you have to truck your suitcases, boxes, whatever, through the residential area to get to this particular unit if it were to be built. I don't think that's ideal, but apparently nobody really paid much attention to that. And that concerns me a little bit. Maybe there's a lesson to be learned for all of us, Pay more attention to what goes on in your neighborhood. Thank you, Your Honor.
Counselor Schuster?
Thank you. There's pros and cons to every single thing out there. When I'm traveling for business and things like that, I do look at things like this. Like, this belongs, this doesn't. One of the things this is going to be helpful on is the people that are across the street on Evans and Irma are going to lose half the noise from the interstate. This is going to be a buffer. And I have seen interstates where they have put dirt mounds that they have landscaped against the interstate to try to make the noise go up and over the top. So will this buffer a little bit of the noise? Yes, it will. Looks, that one's going to be the hardest one on this. It is a steel building. I have seen some of the new materials in Hi-Vis is a steel building, and they have a composite side instead of sheet metal, because I heard him talking about that the covering on this is a stucco look that has a 20-year finish guarantee. So I've seen many buildings that I said, oh, that's just not what I think. We have a church along the side of the interstate that has a steel building that has a finish on it. It looks quite nice. So on this one, I don't even know how to state this. It is someone's private property, and most of the people that own property of this side sell it to developers to either develop housing, because you said a statement like that, and unless there's someone that wants to come in and buy the property and install housing there, it's tough to say that we would rather have you build housing than this, because I don't know how soon, but there's a lot of houses being built in Laramie. There is a lot of houses being built in Laramie. And sometimes I'm afraid that you talked how there were some open apartments there. Some of the new apartment structures here in town are only 3/4 rented. They're over a couple of years old too. I think we finally built enough apartments in this town. On houses, I don't know. Because I don't know a bunch of house owners that go, oh yeah, put my house up next to the interstate. That ain't gonna bother me. So, as it goes right now, yes, I will support this because the Planning Commission has put their stamp on it. Is it a perfect situation? Oh, no, it's not even close to a perfect situation. But it's a legal situation. That's one of the biggest things is when you vote on something, have you voted legally for the city of Laramie? Thank you.
Other comments? I have a few, but I'll defer. Ms. Donor?
I don't know if this is a comment or just a general question, but I feel some confusion about this topic, the next agenda item, and the blending of those. And I also feel confusion about our options. So to kind of dovetail off of what Councilor Schuster said, I don't really understand what we can do that would be legal as an alternative. So I guess I would like to hear responses.
Mr. Bloom, would you come and
that would be
clarify that?
fantastic.
And to clarify, so what we have on the floor right now is the land use change amendment. However, both conversations are very connected, so I've been happy to allow blending of the conversation. But right now, we're on the land use change. Mr. Bloom, could you outline our options,
Yeah.
please?
So again, this is a resolution to certify planning commission's action to essentially say that they made appropriate findings. Your options are A, certify, land use plan amendment, it's certified. Option 2, you could remand it back to the planning commission, ask them for further study. The planning commission has the option, or they're required within 30 days to put that on their agenda and bring it back forward. If they just choose to ignore it, then their initial resolution stands. There's also the ability to postpone to a date certain, specifically for a valid reason. We couldn't just postpone just to postpone. So that's regarding the land use plan amendment. Assuming that's certified, the land use plan would change to suburban commercial, which would then support a rezoning for that area of land. The next agenda item is a rezoning of that entirety of that tract of land for the storage complex as B2. You could take that request of B2 and amend the zoning map accordingly, or you could, condition it to a lesser zoning like B1, which would also allow for the mini storage complex, but it would require that there's another public process, the conditional use permit process, that they'd have to go through. So those are your options for the two items that are in front of you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I have a few comments for council. So a couple of things that came right off the bat is obviously I'm over in this neighborhood and I did do my due diligence. I went and walked houses until I froze to death. And I hit 18 of them and then I actually answered the door. And I have 9 no's, 6 yeses, and 3 I don't cares was the tally from the houses. My concerns are obviously long-term. So what does this look like as a gateway for the city of Laramie in 10 or 15 years? Is this going to be one of the properties that we wish we hadn't changed everything so that this could develop this way? My bigger concern is really this would be a very unique situation in the city of Laramie. There is nowhere else, including Fall Creek, where we have mini storage up against residential. If you pull up the Google Maps for Fall Creek right now on your thing, there is not a single house that faces Fall Creek storage. Nobody walks out their front door and sees Fall Creek storage. There's an apartment complex and they're all facing other ways, and then there's one house at the end that faces south. So there's no other housing development around the entirety of Fall Creek. So there's nowhere else in Laramie that we have asked a neighborhood to put a storage unit complex smack up against a residential. And this is not just residential on one side, this is residential on multiple sides. This is a truly residential neighborhood. What this map doesn't show you is the other things that have filled in here. So you have developmental on the corner of Centennial and Pierce. You have hospice on the lots that are just south of that, so that'd be west of Irma Court. All of these lots in here are filled in with duplexes. There's some apartments to the south of Evans. This is truly a residential neighborhood in every way, shape, or form. And I don't think that it's fair that we ask this particular neighborhood in West Laramie to sacrifice their neighborhood to a mini storage complex. Now, I certainly feel some sympathy for the developer that is trying to develop their land. I get that. But it's zoned for R3 right now. It is supposed to be a residential neighborhood, and I would hope that council would uphold that for the sake of this neighborhood in West Laramie. The zoning, the reason I asked about how many times this has been rezoned, the zoning in this neighborhood is a disaster. It's been a mess since I've lived there. I know that I've received probably 2 or 3 notices at least about different changes that have been tried to be made to accommodate different developments and different zonings in this neighborhood. What this neighborhood started out to be and what it is 15 years now are 2 completely different things. And so that's the other thing. I think this neighborhood is, we've developed as a neighborhood with dense residential, and I think we should be allowed to stay that way. There is a tiny piece up by the hotels that I believe is zoned for B1 right now. I certainly support any B1 use in there. If they want to put a smaller mini storage complex and go through the conditional use permit for that particular lot, then I have no issues with that, because that would be square up against the hotels, and we could look at how the rest of that develops. But my neighborhood has said no. They've asked no. They've been very vocal, at least with me in walking. I have asked them to send comments to council, but we all know how that works. So my request to council is that specifically we move to reconsider and remand it to Planning Commission on these specific requests, to look at items 2, 3, and 4, which state the proposed amendment is based on identification of new issues, which I disagree with. The proposed amendment is based on the change in policies, objectives, principles, or standards governing the physical development of the city. I also disagree with that. And the proposed amendment may result in unique development opportunities that will offer substantial benefits to the city. I also disagree with that. There are other places and other more appropriate places that mini storage complex can develop in this city. So my request to council is to please remand this back to Planning Commission with those specific requests to the Planning Commission, that they reconsider those points and reconsider their position. Councilor Plicas?
You know, the biggest challenge in this area is the fact that it's got an interstate right beside it. Okay, and it's not unique. We got interstates all through the country, but I'll use the Front Range, particularly the Wellington area, Fort Collins area, and what they've had to do, and what they've put in. Now there are places down there where you have residential very, very close to the interstate, and as Councilor Schuster suggested, they're building berms. Closer to Denver, you see these huge 12-foot walls just that go for miles. And you know what? And a lot of these are older neighborhoods too. A lot of them went in when they enlarged the interstate and so forth. And you know why it's an extremely expensive thing to do, but you know why they did it, because housing up against these interstates, particularly when these interstates get busier and busier, it's very uncomfortable to live there because it's so noisy. And I think we also have to pay attention to the fact that our Interstate 80, they're already talking about expanding the whole darn thing to 3 lanes. It's going to get, the traffic counts on Interstate 80 are going to go up and up and up. And as those traffic, and by the way, 60% of it or 50% of it is trucks, which make a lot more noise than a single family car. So what I'm saying is all communities are struggling with what to put up against the interstates. Some of the positive things I've seen down in Fort Collins that they're doing is, or Wellington, I'll use as an example, is they have, I think it's a bank of garages, but it could be something different to separate the housing from the interstate. Other places, they've literally put the storage complexes and that type, they put commercial things in to buffer it. There's no real good answer, but I can tell you one thing: if you put housing up against it, and I don't care whether it's single family, multifamily, or whatever, the people living in those places, they come to the conclusion it's not a very comfortable place to live. They realize if they bought the place, they realize they made a mistake, and if they're renting it, they're not going to stay very long because the noise will drive them nuts. Unless you do the berms, unless you do the multi-money $1 million, or not million, but thousands and thousands of dollars to invest in these huge walls and everything. So it's a huge challenge. Now, the point that we don't have storage units next to residential areas, at the present time, that's true. But I'll tell you right now, and the planning department can verify this on me, up in the Turner Track, we have approved a storage complex that's going to be a neighborhood storage complex right along the housing on Vista Drive. And Mr. Bloom, correct me if I'm not right on that, but I distinctly remember approving that zoning, and I distinctly remember approving that complex.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, that was approved as part of the Grandview Heights Planned Unit Development. It is located on the
Right.
southwest corner of Vista and Bill Nye Avenue.
And it will be abutting residential housing.
Yes.
Yeah, it just hasn't gone in yet, but the approval's there. I'm not saying, I'm just saying it's done. I'm not saying this is, there's a lot of valid points, but I tell you right now, putting residential, putting multifamily up against interstates is not the smartest thing to do. If you can sell them, fine, but I don't want to live there. Heck, I live 2 miles from an interstate, and I can hear the darn traffic from that point. It's something we deal with. I can hear the train whistles too, by the way.
Yeah.
But my point is it's a difficult situation, and to think that's going to be residential and it should be residential, I'm just not convinced that's the smart way to go. So, Mayor, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with part of it, but I also agree with the challenges of what do you do with it. Leaving it blank, that doesn't solve your problem, because if you're a block away, you're basically moving the noise to the block unless you do some sort of huge berms or something else. So those are my comments, and thank you.
Thank you. I want to add just real quick to let Councilor Palikas know. So on the buffer, and I forgot, I had it on my list and I forgot to add. So the comments that have been made about it being a buffer, I think are absolutely not valid. I certainly hear the interstate at my house, but the interstate in my neighborhood is set up on a berm. So if you put storage sheds down here,
Sure.
this isn't helping. This is not a buffer. So that doesn't, and we do have residential built up against the interstate right now, and it's full. But it's not going to be a noise buffer. So, other comments, Vice Mayor.
So, I think we're making two extremely valid points here. I guess my question, perhaps to the developer, might be, could the design be different to perhaps, I don't know, if the property is owned north, could the entrance come in on like Centennial, straight down Centennial, and then have the entrance to this storage units be from the hotels on Centennial down into and sort of have something more aesthetically pleasing perhaps to the folks on Evans, so when they do go out their front door, they're not looking at a potential entrance or something? I mean, could we work on design? I guess, I'm way out of my field here, but I'm just trying to help.
Mr. Hoffman.
Okay. An earlier plan did have it at the curve there at Centennial and Evans. We thought for traffic, and I think engineering would agree, it's better not to have an entrance to it on a curve. And your operator, can we go to like 2 down or?
You want the PowerPoint?
Yes. Site plan. So you can see on the curve that is a fire access as it's shown, and then down lower we put the entrance. You can see the little office there on that corner, so there would be about 6 or 7 parking spaces as you would come in and park and do whatever you needed to do to rent a space.
So we'll let these guys go.
Yep. Councilor McKinney.
I was just gonna, does the facility have to be that big?
Yes.
Can you just leave it in the north end and do residential in the other 2 lots?
It doesn't pencil out. This is designed to be 50,000 square feet in phase 1. The part you haven't seen yet is the lower fourth of it is phase 2, which is another 25,000 feet. All one lot.
But you do have an entrance right there at Centennial and Evans. It shows.
It would be a fenced off.
It's fenced
or
off.
fire
Well, I mean,
department
because the
access.
hotel has, if you look at the distance of the driveway from the corner on the motel, that'd be the same distance if you was to put the entrance there. Rather than do it right in the front of the residential neighborhood.
Yeah, I think you could. I think it would be an engineering question if they would want it on the curve.
I would think that that would be better, because if somebody had a big truck to be able to bring in there, it'd be a straight shot. They
Well,
wouldn't
and
have to make the turn.
I was going to also address Counselor Hanson's comment. You know, these are people that are moving, not any different than people that are moving into a home. They're coming with a pickup truck, maybe a trailer. It can't be very big because you can see the turning radiuses, so there's certain sizes that you'll see. So it's going to be a person in a pickup truck or a small van.
So you're saying,
Getting
though,
in and
that
out.
nobody's gonna ever come in there with a U-Haul or a budget truck, or they're not going to do that? They're just gonna be in a.
No, they would do that, I agree, but you can
That's-
see by the radiuses and.
Some of the budget trucks are 22,000 to 26,001 pounds.
Right, but.
I mean, they're big
yeah.
trucks.
Yeah, but that, you know, they will have, you can see the turning radiuses won't allow some of those bigger trucks.
Counselor Hanson?
The lower part, not the diagonal or whatever, on the interstate side, is that supposed to be a retaining wall?
No, there's no retaining walls.
You know, on the thing that I got here,
Dotted lines.
that's not
No,
retaining walls.
That's a narrow building, so it's
So it's
just
a
one.
narrow
Yes, sir.
building.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some
Can I?
of those are closets type storage, very
They're
small.
probably
5 by
10
8s.
foot deep.
10
Yeah,
foot deep.
5 by 10s or 10 by 10s, yeah.
10 by 10s.
And how high are they? They're just
I would
one
say the
story.
low side is 8 to 12 feet and the high side's 12 to 14.
Thank you.
And then, can I go back to a comment that you
Please.
made too, Mayor? You know, this has been my subdivision now for 15 years, so I can appreciate your comments, one on the zoning, which I can't really speak to that because I got what I got. But two, it's always been planned to be commercial on the north, residential moving to the south. We never knew what that would look like. The reason Irma Court went in 3 years ago, was trying to get activity out there because the whole subdivision sat pretty stagnant for, you know, through the downturn. So we were trying to make activity happen. We put the twin homes there to create that buffer. We put the twin homes along Evans Street that face what's proposed to be built here along there. So to me, this thing is developing out, you know, in a time frame and a quality level and aesthetics and, you know, so I still stand behind what we're trying to accomplish with this. You know, I will tell you in the Planning Commission meeting, it was quite flattering to be complimented on what a nice subdivision Westfield is and kind of my vision of what we would like to see out there. And so, you know, it was built as an affordable community, not affordably priced. There's no government monies or anything like this. This has always been my methods of trying to get it built. But we wanted a place where a family could move, 3-bedroom, you know, 2-car garage, that kind of a home. So we've done that, but we've also brought down the fact that we've had the business. And I would also say these were zoned as business lots along the interstate. We just had this zoning fiasco, if you will, trying to get it. So any other comments or questions?
Any other questions for Mr. Hoffman? Counselor Shumway?
Well, just a comment. It doesn't show it on this picture here, but obviously the successful use of the land, if you jump the interstate, is trailers. And there's several of them.
Right.
And I don't know how long you're gonna own this property, you know, you're not gonna live forever, and you'll probably eventually sell everything. If that's the successful formula when you jump across, and on a lot of the interstate, there's a lot of trailer park developments. Some of them are really eyesores. I don't know what's gonna prevent this from eventually becoming a trailer park instead of, you know, duplexes, single-family units and things like that. What's gonna, because if you're not moving the property right now and it's not developing, it lays undeveloped, somewhere down the road, someone's gonna say, the only thing that's working is trailer parks. And that concerns me.
Well, I don't think zoning-wise you could ever do trailer parks on this part. The south part of this property, when I bought it, was zoned for trailer. It was in R2M, I think, yeah. Not the vision that I wanted to put my stamp on, so that's why we built it the way we have done it so far. And again, I still believe in what we're doing, and I think this is the best use, best fit.
Again, my comment is that as it lays vacant and it changes ownership, someone may come in and ask for another change and say, this will either remain vacant or we're gonna have to do something to develop it. So I don't know what's gonna come of this. I look at your proposal, obviously, that's one option that we have to consider. And I don't know that anyone in this council really is in the business right now of trying to take vacant property and develop it to where everyone's gonna be happy, but we have to consider something that works. And hopefully we'll hear what that is.
I would also, I don't like to put financial things on it, but I was looking at the pro forma that they have done where I mentioned they have maintenance and everything planned, salaries for people. But the property taxes are $30,000 worth of property taxes that will, we're trying to create a business out there and sales tax and all those other things. So it's better than a vacant lot, which it's been for 8 or 10 or 12 years.
Right.
Any other questions for Mr. Hoffman? Vice Mayor?
So just to reaffirm, a different design is completely off the table.
No, not at all. We're working on it now.
A different design?
Coffee and Associates is laying out no ma'am, we're working on the design now. But if the direction is you want to see the entrance on the curve, first question will be for the engineers to decide if that's a reasonable safety. I think safety is the biggest question. There's some drainage on that curve too that'll have to be figured out if that would be where you want to put it. But this is going to be way less impact than apartments. And apartments would have entrances, several locations down that street with a lot more cars coming and going. That's why we thought the entrance down where we have it would be okay.
So this is not the final design?
No, this is our preliminary work in progress. We're pretty close to having a submittal ready to bring down to the city for their first review. I don't know when that's scheduled, but I think it's within the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
Councilor McKinney?
But this is just the option. That's it, nothing else. We can't shorten it, we can't change it, but this is what we get. You might change
Well, you
the
could
entrance if the
change-
engineering
yeah.
is right, but this is the way you're going. You're not gonna change it no matter what.
Well, I guess I'm not clear.
Like you're
less
not gonna
units
go
or-
residential, you're not gonna do anything. This is the plan, this is what you wanna have done, this is what you wanna do.
I mean, frankly, if this is
Just
shot down,
change the
then
colors,
it's
whatever the
Plan
aesthetics
B
look
is. We have no Plan B.
There is no, okay.
We're moving forward with what we think is highest and best use. And
But you
if-
won't scale it down, you won't.
I mean, we can, if there's a recommendation to look at something, we're happy to.
Well, that's
work
why I
with
was
that.
asking why can't you just do just the north lot up by the motels, have the entrance in on the corner and do residential from there down?
Yeah.
Oh, and that was looked at. The size is too small.
That piece of property is too small?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
That's a pretty sizable piece of property.
It's a little less than 2 acres with a lot of easements on it. And getting access in off that corner. That was the original design that the city approved the rezoning 5, 6, 7 years ago. They had it just on that lot up in the corner. That's why it never went anywhere, is it didn't have enough size to it.
Any other questions for Mr. Hoffman? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any other discussion from council?
Mayor, I have another question for the
Please.
director.
Please, Councilor Stoner?
What is it?
Mr. Bloom.
Boom.
Mr. Bloom, can you come up?
I won't forget it now. I just have a process question. So if we were to say no to this with additional things that we want the planning commission to examine, then it would go back to them. They would have 30 days to take those into consideration. They could bring back exactly what we're looking at, but they could also bring back alternatives based on our discussion and direction. Is that correct?
Honorable Chair and Commissioner Stoner, that is correct.
Okay.
Counselor.
And then at that point, would we be charged with the same exact question and the same exact decision where we are tonight? Would we then have to approve this again?
Honorable Chair, or Honorable Mayor, I'm talking about the Planning Commission, so I'm changing gears. Okay. Honorable Mayor and Council.
I've done that.
Regardless of the Planning Commission's decision, if they pass a resolution to approve a land use plan amendment or to deny, you would then certify that action. So you would be in the position of certifying something. If they make the same findings, you'll have the exact same resolution in front of you with the minor date change. If they deny, it'd be a different resolution.
Would there be process for public comment along that period? Would the same process happen with the Planning Commission, the hearings?
Honorable Mayor and Councilor Stoner, there would not be another notification that would be provided. There was a notification of the Planning Commission's prior public hearing where it's anticipated if they go to one, they then follow the cycle and they would then know that it would be back to the Planning Commission at their next meeting. So there would not be another mailed notice. I should note that there is a mailed notice as part of the ordinance amendment. The only notification we give for ordinances are 15 days prior to the public hearing, which is scheduled for the 21st. So residents are never notified of first reading. They're only notified of that public hearing and the Planning Commission meeting that preceded it.
Mr. Moon, can I ask a clarification question? We have to certify the land, because you said the notification won't go out until 15 days before the public hearing, so it hasn't gone out yet. So people haven't received notice about this again, but we have to certify the land use plan before we can even do reading one on the zoning? Or could we potentially postpone this, do reading one on the zoning, and then have the public hearing in 2 weeks?
Honorable Mayor and Council, two things. Yes, you could postpone the consideration of this to the public hearing. I don't know how it, I have to ask the clerk if it's appropriate to have a public hearing on an item that has not been introduced, an ordinance that has not been passed on first reading.
Right, you need to wait for the second.
We can do that.
Right, so could we postpone the land use change, because this is just a one and done, right, for the land use change? To certify it, that's just a one and done.
Correct, it's just a one and done.
But the rezoning is 3 readings and a public
Yes.
hearing. So can we postpone the certifying of the land use change until after the public hearing? Could we do the first reading of the rezoning tonight?
And approve.
Presumably, if it passes, then we could go do the land use change later.
Honorable Mayor and Council, when it comes to zoning changes, they're supposed to be generally in conformance with the land use plan. This is a first reading, so ideally, we would like to have the land use plan disposed of at first reading. However, in the past, the council hasn't necessarily followed that. When we did a multifamily development complex over on 30th and Grand, the land use element was postponed to later in the process. This is over on 30th and Garfield the Point. Also with the more recent annexation that occurred for the Love's Travel Center, that resolution was postponed to a later date. So I would think that it's safe to say you could do that. You could pass this on first reading. However, noting that you could not pass it on third reading for final disposal of the ordinance until you get that done.
Okay.
And the notice for that meeting on the 21st, it was sent out on Friday and it was published in the Laramie Boomerang on Saturday.
Okay.
So there is some mail that should be within 300 feet of this proposed
Should be
complex.
Being received today or maybe tomorrow. Okay. City Attorney, do you agree with that? Can we postpone or to entertain postponing the land use change until, and then do the first reading of the rezoning tonight, and then do the land use change and the second reading of the zoning together after the public hearing?
Yes,
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Attorney. Vice Mayor?
So I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and move that we postpone this particular item from 2 weeks to tonight, or from tonight. And I would also like to add, if a different design is available in 2 weeks, because did you not mention that there might be another design possibility? Or you were going to put a final design forward in 2 weeks?
We're working on the design. So it's pretty close to this, but it's not exactly this. This is kind of a picture for us to present this when we did it back for zoning. So I know, I just saw what Coffee was working on today. Well, we probably could have something if the direction is you want to change that entrance to the curve. I think that's pretty quick questions to the city engineering staff to see if that's even allowed. But that, we could reshuffle that if that was what you'd like us to do.
So I will just restate my postponement.
Hoffman.
Thank you very much. So I would just like to move to postpone this action for 2 weeks from tonight. 21st.
To the 21st,
Yeah.
Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Second by Councilor McKinney.
Here comes Derek, we're in trouble
Mr.
now.
Teedy, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Mayor and council, I just want to remind you that in the land use element as well as the zoning element, you may discuss elements of design. There's no requirement that they follow through with anything that you discuss here at this dais. The applicant can say, yes, he will, and he may decide to do that for you at your request, but he is not required to. And I want to make sure that you are very clear of that, because if it comes to the point where staff is required to actually do something about that, we will tell you we will not be able to do something about that. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
Thank you, Mr. Teedy. Crystal clear. All right, any discussion on the postponement? Councilor
I
Plicas.
guess I'd like to be clear on why we're postponing for 2 weeks. What are we going to accomplish in 2 weeks?
Vice Mayor?
Well, I think one of the reasons I'd like to postpone is just the hour, and we have an agenda yet to get through. I think that, and we're still talking about this. So that's one of the reasons. And then the other reason is to basically see if some of the things that our mayor mentioned in terms of items 2, 4, and 6, I believe they were.
Yeah, 2, 3, and 4.
If they can be a little bit more research to see if there's actually some validity to those comments and further investigation, and that may take a couple days.
Councilor Plicas.
So who's going to do the research to counter what staff has already provided us as an opinion?
Vice Mayor, I'll let you have it first.
I would hope staff could take a look at that a second time to think about some of the things that were mentioned.
City Attorney.
If I may, Mayor, and I don't
Please.
mean to interpose myself, but you're being asked to certify an action of the Planning Commission, which is the decision maker in this matter. You have a choice. Certainly you can postpone your certification for 2 weeks, but there's not going to be any more action by the Planning Commission, which is the one who handles these matters. You can remand it to the Planning Commission to ask them to study or review one thing or another,
But I think certainly as I read this code, it is, staff has explained to you today what they observed at the Planning Commission, and attached the Planning Commission's action for you to certify. So I don't know that there's not going to be any more substantive action that occurs in 2 weeks. If I may be so bold, and I don't mean to, these decisions are yours.
Okay. Postponement, Counselor Gabriel.
City Attorney just said what I was going to say, and Dave brought up the same thing. I'm not sure what we're going to accomplish by postponing. We have the Planning Commission going through the process. They have made the recommendation. I think the council has to come to a decision whether or not it's an up or down vote on certification, and we'll leave it there.
So I have a comment on postponement. And I should have mentioned this before, but when I went door to door, the number one complaint from everybody that had a complaint about the process was that they didn't know what was going on. Now, there's a sign out there on the property. Counselor Schuster is absolutely right. But they did not know. I understand Mr. Hoffman said that his gentleman went door to door during the daytime. I certainly didn't get a knock on the door, or I wasn't there, and I didn't get anything on my door. Neither did my neighbors. Neither did the ones that I talked to. So the biggest complaint is that they didn't know what was going on until I showed up on their doorstep today. So the postponement to me is to allow for the mailing to reach their house, to have a public hearing, to give them a shot. I have the people that I've talked to that have said no, I have asked them to email council. I have asked them to make their views clear, and we can give them time to do that. The reason that I think a postponement of this action is appropriate, because this is a one and done. We will not get another chance at this. And I do believe that I can provide justifications for why 2, 3, and 4 don't line up with what staff thought. So, Councillor Hanson.
Just a question to clarify. Now, you said you didn't get a notification of any sort. How could this be? Do they just knock on the door and say nobody's there, march on, or do they leave something at the door? I think that's an important kind of issue to find out how this surveying is done. I know it's of course windy in Laramie and things blow away, but I would like to know how this notification was done. Maybe we could clarify that.
So, and let me clarify, there's two different types of notification. The first is anybody that lives within 300 feet, which is an itty-bitty tiny bubble, gets a mailer from the city of Laramie.
Yeah.
And that's a fault, I think, of the city of Laramie process. I mean, it really just clips the very edge of the neighborhood, the people across the street, couple houses up, and that's it. My understanding is the certification was made, or the justification was that they went out to the whole neighborhood and they door knocked to the whole neighborhood, and that is not what I heard. And I will absolutely admit that it is windy, and if it was the day, maybe I'm thinking of a couple of weeks ago when we had, 70-mile-an-hour winds or whatever, it's entirely possible anything stuck to a door flew away. But the complaint was, first they'd heard about it. So part of that is the fault in the city process, in my opinion, of we only go out 300 feet from the property. But it's a complaint that they didn't know until I showed up on their door.
Can we find out?
Yeah, Mr. Hoffman, please. Mr. Bloom.
Honorable Mayor and Council, I'm sorry, two-part answer. I'll do for part one. The city's process, yes, is 300 feet, which is relatively standard in the planning practice. Of that 300 feet, we had multiple property owners representing 40 individuals, so it's probably about 48 different properties, because some properties are owned by the same person. So our standard practice is to mail out 2 weeks prior to the public hearing, so those went out. When we adopted our development regulations, our new development regulations in the Unified Development Code back in 2007, we actually increased that from 120 feet. So we have increased that quite significantly over time to sort of meet the industry standard. So that's what we had done. That's the bare minimum. When we had our pre-application meeting with the developer, we asked him to go build a rapport and communicate with the neighborhood, to go out and talk to the neighborhood to try to get opinions so they didn't feel shell-shocked. So that's where they took it upon themselves to do a voluntary effort to do their door-to-door. So I can let Paul detail what went on there, but that was an action that was not required that they did, just to try to solicit comment. That's a standard practice that we and our planning staff do with potential developments, is we say, hey, you need to talk to the neighbors first. If if you're doing a childcare, if you're doing an oversized building, if you're doing an apartment complex or anything, because we don't like to hear it at the very last minute. We like people to get involved early on.
Mr. Hoffman, did you want to add to that?
I was just going to say, we went above and beyond because we did the 300 feet. Those all got mailed. That's what Charles mentioned is the rules of City of Laramie. The gentleman who works for Grow Your Storage came up here on September 20th. He walked the entire neighborhood of everything in Westfield. He knocked on doors and he put flyers where he could find places to put them, indoors or under mats or whatever. And the people he spoke with, nobody had negative comment to him. They just, I guess, said thank you. But he did inform them. We know that one of them, somebody got a flyer because they called the planner and asked questions. I can't tell you if they blew away. I can't tell you if the spouse got it and threw it away before the other spouse. I can't speak to that, but that, to me, doesn't really, I mean, we tried to reach out to the neighborhood. We did it more than what the city requires. So, you know, there's a sign, I don't know what else. I mean, I'll go walk the neighborhood with you next week if you want and show people what we got going on out there. We chose not to do a neighborhood meeting. We weren't required to. We didn't really know who would show up. So anyway, it was all done the way it was supposed to be done.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Councilor Palikas.
I have a comment, before I make a comment, that 300 feet, Mr. Bloom, that 300 feet does not include the frontage street, it only includes the properties, am I correct on that?
Honorable Mayor and Councilor Palikas, is actually measured from the boundary of the property. So it's 300 feet from the edge of their property over the road and across the
All
street.
right, so the average road's about 60 feet wide, and the average lot's about 100 feet, so you're about 160 feet. And then another lot's 100 feet, so you're basically covering at least a solid block away from anything that's even on the property of that. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a fair assessment. Prior code used to be 120 feet excluding rights-of-way, which is really tough to map.
So to be clear, that 300 feet is everybody that's has a view shed of that property and probably has the greatest impact as far as what their perception would be of that plan.
Honorable Mayor and Councilor Palikas, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the postponement? Councilor Stoner?
Mayor, my concern with the postponement is I'm uncertain about the involvement of the planning commission. To me, that seems like a step that's missing, or a piece that's missing. I'm concerned about just doing our own research and kind of stepping over that bound rather than sending, if we share the concerns, the three concerns that we have, back to them and asking them to explore it. So that for me is the piece that's missing. I personally am open to the idea of a postponement, mainly because I'm a little hesitant for my second vote on council to be a major upzone that will, I would appreciate some more time to process this, but I also acknowledge that that isn't a reason to completely not go ahead. So I'm just wondering if there's a way we can incorporate that into this idea or compromise.
Councilor Schuster?
I'm just gonna talk procedure. We could vote down the postponement. Another amendment could be brought up to send it back to the planning commission with those three statements. So if you vote for the postponement, it's not going back to the planning commission, at least for 2 weeks. If you, and I'm gonna use the word defeat the postponement and then bring up an amendment to send it back to the planning commission, that would have exactly what you're doing. And I might, the attorney might correct me on that, but I believe that's
correct.
what our procedure would be here, if that is what you're talking about.
City Attorney?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilor Hanson?
Just one comment. I heard Councillor Shumway say something that struck a note in me, and that was that what we're doing here could conceivably make a bad situation even worse. You know, I think I understood you correctly when you said that, and you were referring to model whatever,
Mobile home.
mobile homes going in there, etc. And I mean, I'm speaking to the postponement indirectly because I think that might be something that comes off it, you know, that this gets even worse than it is. And so sometimes you got to let sleeping dogs lie or something like that. I don't know.
Any other comments on the postponement? All right, any public comments on the postponement? All right, Counselor Stoner.
I have another procedural question, excuse me. If the postponement was voted for approval, would there be an opportunity for an additional motion to send it back to Planning Commission, so it was both things?
One or the other.
Okay.
City Attorney, can you verify that it needs to be one, we can't
It's one or the other.
postpone and then do another motion to send it back to Planning Commission?
That's correct. Once you move to postpone, it's postponed.
It's postponed. Okay. Great. But if Counselor Schuster's right, if postponement's defeated, then we can entertain another motion. So, all right, any other comments on the postponement? City Clerk, can you do roll call on the postponement, please?
McKinney,
Yes.
Stoner,
Yes.
Hanson,
No.
Gabriel,
No.
Polikis,
No.
Shumway,
No.
Schuster,
No.
Pierce,
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That is 4 yeses and 5 noes, Your Honor.
Thank you. That amendment fails. So we're back on the main motion. We can entertain another amendment if you'd like to, or we can go to the main question. Are there any further amendments?
Try it,
go for it.
Sure. I want to move that we send this back with the, for further investigation of number 2, 3, and 4.
To remand.
Yeah.
Remand it. Do we have a second for that?
I'll second.
Second by the Vice Mayor. Any discussion on the remanding back to Planning Commission? Counselor
I'll just
Plikus.
make a quick comment. It's been my experience in the past when we send stuff back to planning commissions and boards like that, they basically look at it and say, hey, we've done our due diligence, we figured it out, and they come back with the same answer.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying it's gonna happen this time, but this has been the history more than once when you remand things back to that commission.
Any other discussion on the remanding?
I didn't catch the second, Your Honor.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you.
Counselor Shumway.
Not that it really makes a lot of difference, but there's going to be a different face of the planning commission.
Two new faces.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at a different group, maybe different thoughts.
I have one comment for the group on the on remanding, and that is I certainly understand that we've given notice in some forms to the neighborhood, but I feel like I did my due diligence as a council member to go walk the neighborhood, go talk to the neighbors. They have spoken very plainly and very clear to me, and I think that the Planning Commission needs to hear that in whatever form that is. So I hope that you guys would support the remanding so that it can go back for further discussion. I mean, that's my job as a council member, is to bring what my neighborhood has said to you guys, and I've done that. So, any other discussions on the remanding? Is there any public comment on the motion to remand? Any further discussion? City Clerk, can you do roll call on remanding the item back to Planning Commission?
Stoner,
Yes.
Hanson,
No.
Gabriel,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Polikis,
Yes.
Shumway,
Yes.
Schuster,
No.
Pierce,
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 7 yeses, 2 noes, Your Honor.
Thank you. That motion carries, and it is remanded back to Planning Commission. Procedural question, because we have a rezoning application, can we go ahead and do that, or what do we need to do with that, Mr. Bloom? Because now we've remanded it back to Planning Commission.
Should wait.
Honorable Mayor and Council, I suggest we talk about everything we talked about one more time. After we thoroughly discuss
Only
it.
quickly, it's 9:10.
But actually, what would probably be best would be to introduce the ordinance and then postpone it to the 21st, where we will have a public hearing that's been advertised and notice has been sent.
Okay,
So to put the ordinance on the table.
thank you very much.
Which is,
So, Councilor McKinney, can you put the ordinance on the floor, please?
I hope I got the right one pulled up. Move to approve the ordinance number 1975 in the first reading, rezoning lots 1 and 2, Block 9, Westfield Village, second filing, and Lot 5. Block 10, Westfield Village, second filing, revised Block 10 from R3, multifamily, and B1 limited business to B2 business, based on the findings of fact, conclusions, and law, set a public hearing for November 21st, 2017.
Do we have a second?
second.
Second by the Vice Mayor. Do we have a motion to postpone? Is that, I guess, that was the recommendation from Mr. Sorry. Recommendation from Mr. Bloom is to postpone this until the 20th, to postpone first reading till the 21st.
I move that we postpone this till the 21st.
I would
Second.
second that. Oh, well, go ahead.
Second by the Vice Mayor on a postponement. Any discussion on the postponement? Any public comment on the postponement?
Klaus had his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Councilor Hanson.
It seems to me it would be stupid not to postpone it if we're postponing the other one. We're discussing something in a vacuum. Thank you.
Well said. Oh, Mr. Bloom.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, I should just note that the related item, the comprehensive plan amendment, will be reconsidered by the Planning Commission on the 27th of November. That'll be the next meeting that we can get it to. So there is a chance at the 21st, after the public hearing, that ordinance could be postponed again.
So do we need to redo the?
No, it's fine.
Just letting you guys know.
Okay.
Just an FYI.
FYI, yeah.
Okay, any other discussion on the postponement? City Clerk, can you do roll call on the postponement, please?
McKinney,
Yes.
Stoner,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Polikis,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes?
Shumway,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes,
That's 9 yeses and 0 noes, Your Honor.
thank you. That
Guys
postponement
forced my hand, right?
All right, that is postponed until November 21st. We have, it is 9:13. We have 2 regular business items left. Can we run them real quick?
I'd like to break.
If you want to take a break, you can certainly, all right,
It's potty time.
5-minute quick break, and then right back, 5 minutes. All right,
Sure, you're back
so
up here
we've
then.
got, run. All right, so we have 10 minutes before we have to put a motion on the floor to suspend the rules to get through the rest of the agenda. So, item number 14, Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm gonna turn on my microphone. Thank you, Your Honor. I move to approve resolution number 2017-69, authorizing an expenditure for a one-time employee stipend taken from budgeted 1% personal reserve, half-year authorized a budget transfer from salary savings to match a full year, and provide a small stipend for provisional employees and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Second by the Vice Mayor.
Go.
City Manager, did you want to take this one, or do you want me to?
Yes, please. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It is my privilege to bring this item forward on behalf of city staff this evening. As noted in the cover sheet, the council did approve through budget adoption in June, setting aside a 1% personnel reserve. I am recommending to you that 1% personnel reserve be used for a stipend for city employees in December. The reason for that, of course, is outlined in the cover sheet. We have very significant uncertainty about what the legislature will bring in the next biennium in funding for cities, towns, and counties. As you know, our funding situation in this biennium is about $2.7 million less in state shared funding than we enjoyed in the previous biennium. So that uncertainty exists now, and certainly we expect will continue into the biennium that starts July 1st of this upcoming year. The last time that your city staff received any increase in compensation was in January of 2016 with the implementation of our new compensation program to bring our employees to 98% plus or minus 2% of the market for employees in municipalities in Wyoming and some of our competing cities on the Front Range of Colorado. We met previously, myself and the finance director, with the finance committee to run this concept through them. Finance committee seemed amenable to bringing it forward for consideration by the full council. So let's get to the nuts and bolts. The recommendation would use the 1% personnel reserve that you have already appropriated, and then also draw from what I'm calling salary savings. So as you know, we've eliminated 14 positions. We also are holding open and unfilled about 8 or 9 positions right now. That creates savings in our personnel budget. When we're holding open positions, staff who are here are working doubly hard to cover for the folks who aren't on staff and being paid. So using those two sources of funds, we would provide the stipend at $950. The stipends will be taxable. We estimate, depending on any individual's taxable rate, the stipend should amount to around $700. In addition, this year we are recommending for the first time a stipend for our provisional employees. So these are part-time folks, non-benefited. That would amount to $50 or $100 for employees based upon the number of hours that they work. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. The cover sheet also outlines the budgetary implications, and the finance director's here as well. If you have any questions for us, we're happy to take them.
Councilor Hanson.
Thank you, Honor. Just one quick question on on our information, paragraph 3 on the background. I was unclear. Are we paying a stipend every month, or are we paying it once at Christmas or whenever?
Council, this would be a one-time stipend. I believe we will have those checks out in December, and so it'll be a one-time stipend just in December for this fiscal year.
I thought that might confuse the staff when it says recommended a 12 months 1% expense equivalent stipend. So it's paid once.
One time, one
Good.
check.
I just
probably
wanted
in
to be
December.
sure that staff understands that, because it's a little unclear here. Thank you.
Any other questions for the city manager on this? Any comments from the public? All right, comments from council?
It's too bad we can't do more.
Yeah. Right. I will echo Council
Exactly.
Gabriel. This is what I would consider a small gesture to a number of wonderful City of Laramie employees that have really pulled through the last 12 months, 18 months, where we've been under terrible budget crisis. You know, I used the word Herculean efforts earlier today. Literally, people that are just putting in crazy amounts of time and effort, and the city would not be running like it is right now without those efforts. So if we can do this for them, I hope that it is well received, and I wish we could do more. Agreed. Any other comments? All right, City Clerk, roll call, please.
Shumway.
Yes.
Pelikas.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
Stoner.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 noes, Your Honor.
Thank you. That motion carries. All right, item number 15, Councilor Hanson.
Thank you, Honor. I have to preface this. There's going to be a small change to my reading the recommendation, because on your documentation it says appointing 3 members. We have some internal problem. Sits over there. So we will appoint 2 people, okay? I just wanted to make that clear. And so let me read what it says here with the change. I move that council appoint 2 members to the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment for the city of Laramie. I hope I have the right one. Yes, I do. And advertise for a 3rd person at a later point.
Would you
The
want to
2
add the
names are Mr. Mark Homer and Mr. Brent Roth.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Gabriel. He beat you by just a smidge.
That's fine.
The city clerk has a problem.
City clerk.
Your Honor, can we ask for a correction to that motion to include authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would you care to add that, motion maker?
And authorize the mayor and clerk to sign for 2 people.
Second agrees.
Perfect. Motion is adjusted. Any discussion on this?
Good to see you.
Any comments from the public?
I'll make
Counselor
one
Plikus.
I recognize one of the names, Brent Roth, who ran for council. It's really encouraging to see him decide, and it's really encouraging to see him being one of the successful applicants. So I think it's very good.
I think you'll be very
Thank you,
good.
Brett.
Absolutely.
We should probably also point out they were all interviewed
Yes,
by a
of course.
subcommittee.
Yep. All right, city clerk, will you do roll call, please?
Hanson,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Stoner,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Fleekus,
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you, that motion carries. On to item number 17 with record speed. Any public comments on non-agenda items? All right, on to number
Half is dumping us.
18. They're out. All right, item number 18, consideration of future council work session topics. Does anybody have any suggestions? Counselor Gabriel.
A question, Mayor. I remember seeing a work session on the 14th about sidewalk snow removal. Is that gone now?
That is scheduled to occur on Tuesday, next Tuesday.
Okay, I didn't see it here when it talked about
We will, so
the work
the,
session will be added to that other item.
it is currently on the
correct.
work session schedule.
Your Honor, there will be 2 work session topics that night. You had already added that sidewalk, snow removal and debris removal to your schedule. So tonight you only saw the addition that was just proposed. So, but they are both on your calendar.
Thank you.
We'll do both of them.
The calendar.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any suggestions on future council work session topics? Okay. And before we move to that, we are starting to put together the retreat for January. Speaking of topics slightly work session related, if council members have ideas on work sessions, topics that they would like to discuss during the retreat, please start to funnel those to city manager, me, Angie, all 3 of us, whatever works, so we can kind of start to collate those. And item number 19, Counselor Hanson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that council adjourn and do nothing else.
We gotta go home.
Who got that? Counselor Stoner, for a second. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.